Because at the end of the day, the difference between Harvard and like UCR is just sometimes just opportunities, right? So if you're able to create those opportunities, like you said, and empower other students to ultimately reach those career goals, then that's what's important. Because I also
Welcome to the Brew. Today we're joined by a special guest. We got Jonathan Javier. Today we're also joined by Nikhil. And we're going to be talking a lot about Wonsulting as well as personal branding, LinkedIn, a lot of really, really good content. So just to get started, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more, a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing?
Of course. Thanks guys for having me. So I currently actually work at Cisco. So I work on the go-to-market strategy and ops team over there in San Jose. And then also I'm the CEO and founder of Wonsulting. And then previously worked at Google and Snap in strategy ops too as well. And so far today we've done 54 workshops / speaking engagements in like 4+ countries, which has been amazing. And it's literally only been a year and a half. So Wonsulting just started actually a year ago from like 6 days ago, because it was my birthday. So, but yeah, basically it started then. It's been really amazing just going to different universities such as UCR, of course, Vancouver, at UBC, all these different places just to make an impact and turn underdogs into winners, which is basically our mission.
Awesome.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we start going into Wonsulting and what it's all about, I think the first thing that I really want to talk about with you, especially with your kind of clout on LinkedIn and all that, is going into the concept of personal branding and your brand in general. Because I had a very good conversation with Neil Goyle, who also is a UCR student.
Yes.
He started and he literally told in this podcast itself like how he got his job at PayPal was through his own personal brand and by pushing out content on LinkedIn. But kind of go into your philosophies on it. What do you think personal branding really is, and how important is it for the modern day job market?
Oh, it's so important. Brand, having a personal brand, because at the end of the day, you think about it, and I was actually just talking to one of my clients recently. A lot of people have similar experiences, right, on their resume, specific skills. But if you have a personal brand where things can come proactively rather than reactively, then that's going to make a difference. Yeah. So for example, actually, my all 3 jobs, Snapchat, Google, and Cisco, I've actually never applied to them. Literally, it's all reactive recruiting. So basically the recruiters reached out, or I just slid in the DMs, as I say, on LinkedIn and like a message them, right? Yeah. But it's very important to create a personal brand around yourself, because at the end of the day, like for example, for me, what I try to do is have that niche market specifically with non-target schools and non-traditional backgrounds, and then help those students get into their careers, right? And so a lot of people have that story, of, oh man, I want to work at a top tech company, or I want to work at a big bank, for example, right? But they just don't have the tools, or they don't know about it, this information, right? So just by bridging that gap, I feel like it's really important. And so that's why I built that personal brand around that. And actually how I started the personal brand was really interesting. So I do, it's funny you mentioned Neil, because he does those videos. I actually did those before too, specifically with weekly words of wisdom.
Right.
And so actually the reason behind that was because I wanted to get into tech and I wanted to network with tech professionals. So then my mindset was, okay, if I do these videos, invite people who are specifically in companies I was interested in working for and showcase them on LinkedIn with my followers, then they'd be like, oh, like, for example, I need a referral for this company, or I need someone to network with. Then that person would be like, okay, yeah, sure, we can definitely connect. So just by kind of building that personal brand, it's allowed not only me to like gain more opportunities, but help my clients and mentees as well. So
I think that's very interesting, because a lot of times when it comes to personal brand, and I brought this up when I was talking with Neil as well, is that a personal brand is really not what you want to say about yourself, it's what other people say about you. And I think that really comes back down to the content that you're creating and pushing out there, because a lot of students, they want their resume to obviously be perfect and the very traditional route. So resume being perfect, their cover letter being perfect, they're applying to the companies that spend a lot of time. But as you stated, a lot of people have the same credibility. They have the same everything, like from their job experience to their education experience, it's all the same. What really, really differentiates them is stuff like those pieces of content that you're really pushing out that really show that like you really care about that industry, or you can actually be a thought leader or push content into that industry. So
yeah, no, definitely. And you think about it, right? It's the content that you create literally reflects like, and what I say actually in the workshops is, think about, for example, Bill Gates. What do you think, like what are some words that come to mind when you think of Bill Gates?
Well, I mean, obviously, right away you're going to think of, Microsoft. You're going to think of the company he created, but then you're also going to think of the Bill Gates Foundation. You're going to think about what he's trying to do for, everything from working with third world countries. He's benefiting back. And I agree with that. That's his personal brand because it comes. He doesn't just talk about that stuff. He puts his actions, his money towards those objectives.
And I was going to say too, literally all the things you said, you learned that from social media, right? Like LinkedIn, all these different articles, and that really reflects your personal brand. So if I was actually looking at Bill Gates' LinkedIn like last week, and he posted about Alzheimer's disease, he posted about his foundation, and that's just a personal brand he's creating. So when people are thinking of, inspiring, someone who cares about the community, they think of Bill Gates, right? So similar to me, what I try to do is, someone who comes from a non-target school, someone who comes from a non-traditional background, who do I think of that could help me get into their career? And so I want to create that personal brand around myself where people will then be like, oh, that's Jonathan. So that's how I kind of created the personal brand around basically myself and Wonsulting.
Nice.
That's a great point. And I think to add like a different perspective of it, like a lot of people don't realize that networking happens internally as well. So right now I'm working at Deloitte, and like networking is such a big part of the culture. And what like a lot of people don't realize going in is that there's so many different roles that you can get as like a business technology analyst or a consultant in the company. And one of my ultimate passions for like the last 2 to 3 years was or it has been and continues to be UX and UI. And when I realized that like Deloitte has this entire area of like people doing digital work and like web design and stuff like that, I was like, okay, I need to stand out from all these other people because right now I look like them, but our skills are actually different. So ultimately it came down to reaching out to the right people and creating content. And for me, that was creating websites and a portfolio and sharing my content with different leaders within the space and getting seen that way. And then eventually, like 1.5 years later, here I am sitting in a UX UI role because of the content that I shared and the people I networked with. So ultimately creating that personal brand isn't only important just for getting a job, it's for getting in the places within the jobs that you already have that you want to be.
Dude, definitely. Networking internally is so important. And especially when you work for any company, you can literally find anybody who's like worked specifically at your company, obviously, right? So that's what I actually did specifically with, like, for example, when I was at Google, I'd always reach out to like the big VPs and try to like talk to them and get a phone chat with them. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you have some people who are higher up there and they're seeing the different things that you're doing, then they can basically, for example, if you want to move into that role, that's why I actually moved from being an analyst to a trainer when I was at Google, just from that networking perspective, because then you can just be like, hey, Nikhil, can we chat for 30 minutes? Yeah. And then, or you can just meet on campus, for example, right? So it's definitely important to network internally. Yeah,
and I can actually even talk about that with Esri. I mean, all of our cases, it's very similar because that's literally the role I'm currently in on the integrated marketing and the digital performance management team at Esri. That really happened from while I was interning at Esri. I asked if I can do a specialty project for this department because a lot of the stuff they're doing interested me. I did a specialty project there. I created connections there. I asked for those 30-minute, one-on-ones with the directors and all that kind of stuff. After I finished it, they set up a specialty position as a student tech while I finished up my MBA, and I got that role. So it really came from networking within that organization, building my personal brand. They understood what my capabilities were, my background, my portfolio, all that kind of stuff, and it allows me to work in that department, which is really cool because I'm the youngest in that department, and you don't see anybody my age in that department, and it really came from just my networking. It didn't come.
You're 15, right? I'm kidding.
I'm a solid 23, but like we'll take the 15 for now. I mean that gives me a lot of clout if I was 15 years old in the department. I mean,
I'd be like, damn, shoot. But that's awesome. No, definitely. Like, and for example, when you network internally too, what I was gonna say is you find mentors, but then also people who are SMEs, subject matter experts at different fields. So for example, like if I have a question in regards to Excel, I'm like, who do I think of? Oh, I think of Mike, which is he's super good at Excel. Or for example, like, if I need help in regards to SQL, who do I reach out to? Oh, I reach out to Justin, right? So at the end of the day, when you're able to network internally, you can find so many other individuals who are SME at specific areas that you're not strong in, and literally send them some projects that you might be working on that you need help with. So yeah, it's very important to do so.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well, because when you're helping other people out, they're going to help you out with stuff. So it kind of goes both ways. It creates that mutual respect within the company. And I think that's what actually makes companies better, is by having the employees themselves find what they're good at, what they're not good at, and working together in a collaborative environment. But that only comes from having those networking opportunities and actually going out there and solidifying your own personal brand, what you're good at and what somebody else is good at, and then helping each other out. Because at the end of the day, not one person in a company is good at everything. So I think that's a really good point.
Definitely. And no, like you said, helping other people out, and that's what Wonsulting's all about, right? Just helping underdogs turn to winners, and that's why I love coming back to UC Riverside and speaking, because at the end of the day, it's actually super, I won't say simple, but it's way easier than people think of how to find jobs, specifically when you graduate, or if you're just trying to find internships by using LinkedIn. So
yeah, and actually that's a perfect segue into the next topic, which is how to use LinkedIn, because obviously LinkedIn is the number one platform for personal branding. It's the number one platform when it comes to professional connections, networking, getting jobs, all that kind of stuff. But majority of the time I see a lot of people using it in the wrong way. And I don't think they're using it in the wrong way because that I feel like they just don't really understand how to use the platform. And a lot of times I think there's two disconnects. One is that they're too scared to put out content because it's a professional platform, so they don't really know how to be professional. Or the other side of the equation is that they are putting out content, but they're putting out content to boast about what they're doing, but not really adding.
I'm happy to announce.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to announce kind of stuff, but they're not necessarily adding added value or providing connections or helping other people out. And I mean, that kind of goes back into Wonsulting, which I'll allow you to kind of talk to, is what is the actual proper way to use LinkedIn? I don't think there is a proper way necessarily, but there's the kind of best practices of how to use LinkedIn to really get that network you want, those jobs that you want, the network you want, and all that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So yeah, LinkedIn you can utilize LinkedIn in so many different ways. So I'll go through the first part actually with networking, right? So a lot of people make the mistake when networking is just by, for example, me reaching out to you, Val, and saying, hey, I want a job at Esri, right? Would you like that if I just said, hey, I want a job?
No, ignore
right?
that.
So basically what individuals should do on LinkedIn is, number one, reach out to alumni, specifically from the university, or if they're part of similar organizations. So for example, Phi Chi Theta, if I were in Phi Chi Theta and I saw someone working at Esri, for example, and I wanted to work at Esri, I would reach out to them because you share something in common.
Yep.
Right. Same thing for UC Riverside, right? And the main part of it too is you have to build rapport first before actually asking for that referral, right? So for example, what I usually say is send a personal invite, like every single time you connect with someone, especially if you don't know them, like strangers. And literally can just be like, hi, Nikhil, hope your day is going well. My name is Javier. Let's say I'm a student, current 4th year business student from UCR. Saw that you graduated from UC Riverside and work at Deloitte. Would be great to connect with a fellow Highlander. Just that simple message, you can just copy and paste that to like different people. You establish, number one, you did research specifically on that person. Number two, that you're both from UCR, for example. And number three, you're gonna be the only person that sends that personal invite. Because at the end of the day, literally people just click connect. Like I have no flex or anything. Like I have like 1,500 connection requests pending right now, like with no personal invites. Right, so it's very important to do that. So that's one part. And then number two, for example, I know you guys talked about like people are just boasting, right? So you definitely should provide value. So for example, what I actually wrote about specifically in the I'm happy to announce article that I did recently of how to like change that into an opportunity is that you actually, well, I'll give two perspectives. Number one, when you announce it, you should show exactly how you kind of got into that job, right? Maybe you got it from a friend, maybe you got it from a referral, maybe you got it from a career center, right? Give those specific steps because then it'll empower other people to follow those steps and get a job too. And then number two, what you can actually do with those I'm happy to announce posts. So you guys, they say I'm happy to announce, they basically just do a little spiel about their story, but at the end, they tag people. Those people that they tag are literally the recruiters. So what do? You send them an invite. You'd be like, hey, Val, hope your day is going well so far. My name is Jonathan. Saw that you got Nikhil a job at Deloitte. It would be great to connect and learn more about the application process. You've literally found every hiring manager, specifically that's the company, just from that. And of course, you're gonna be willing to help you if you share the same characteristics as the other person. So, but yeah, those are two different ways that you can look at it. But yeah, definitely post content on LinkedIn, and how people react to your content is a lot in regards to a story.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, you can have like, this is what I was in my current state, or this is what I was like a year ago. This is the climax of what happened. These are the takeaways I took from it, and this is the results that happened.
Yep.
Basically kind of like STAR, if you think about it, STAR method. So, but yeah, basically it's definitely important to create content because like you said, Neil got his opportunities from there, and that's how I got my opportunities from Snap, Google, and Cisco.
Yeah, and I would like to like kind of add on to that point, which is the content you put out. It doesn't necessarily always have to be just text. I mean, like I mean, video content obviously that's a little scary for some people and stuff like that. But adding more visuals, like photos, like for example, like what you just said, like if you got a job at a career center, having a photo at yourself at the career center, at the table booth, having videos, because a lot of people relate to a visual, seeing a representation of what actually happened or what you're talking about. Text to an extent can be there's a lot of miscommunication there, and I feel like a lot of times people might be writing a post in good intent, but it comes off wrong because the tone that somebody else reads it in, or like there's a lot of misunderstandings to it. So by changing the media content provides a lot more credibility on your platform, and also it shows that you were able to do public speaking if you're doing a video, and it also shows you a lot of more capabilities. So I would recommend a lot of people that are on LinkedIn to try to play around with that and providing more media as well as just the text itself.
Definitely, and the attention spans of people are so small, right? Literally like 30 seconds. If I'm reading like a whole entire article of like 5,000 words, like obviously I'm not gonna read all of it, right?
Yeah.
If you do like quick little videos or quick, for example, text and just value, it's always value driven, people are gonna be attracted to your content and are gonna keep reading it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's very important to also take pictures. Because like, for example, what I tell people all the time too is take pictures with every event you go to, every workshop you hold, because at the end of the day, so for example, what I did was when I was networking with people at Deloitte, I would take pictures with the employees. Whenever I met with them, I would tag them on LinkedIn, make a post saying, thanks, let's just say Nikhil, thanks Nikhil for meeting up with me, really appreciate how we spoke about XYZ. Guess what? The reason why I did that was because, let's say Nikhil likes it, comments on it. Who's all of Nikhil's connections?
Obviously everybody in Deloitte.
Deloitte, right? So think about that, right? Think about it. If you want to work in a company, let's say I want to work at Esri, let's say I want to work at Google, Facebook, go have a coffee chat with someone, post it on LinkedIn saying, oh, I found value specifically in this chat, tag them, they like and comment on it, all their followers are going to see it, then you look at profile views, you add all the people at Facebook. Say, hey, John, hope your day is going well so far, same thing, and then be like, I saw that you viewed my profile due to my recent post with this person. Literally, you just brought in your whole entire network, or you created a whole entire network of professionals in your dream company.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, didn't Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn, like see some of your content?
He did. Yeah, he's shared actually the first. So basically, how I started with workshops was I wanted to work for LinkedIn, and I was like, all right, if I'm gonna work for LinkedIn, what should I do? Oh, LinkedIn workshops, right? So I posted it on LinkedIn. And one of the workshops in Cordia Irvine University, Jeff Weiner liked it, and that's how all the people at LinkedIn found me.
Oh, wow.
And then 6 months ago, when I talked about my career journey from Snap to Google to Cisco, he liked and shared it.
Nice.
So then it got like, I think it has 44,000 likes.
Oof, wow.
And 3 million views on it, which is incredible, right? And there's a lot of people who comment on it, and it's just cool because like we talked about the personal branding. Like at Cisco, like everyone just calls me like a Cisco celebrity because a lot of people just know me from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And like that's how I actually got my speaking engagement to speak at Great Place to Work this year.
Wow.
Which is like the big conference for best places to work. So I'm representing Cisco as like the millennial. And I'm gonna be like the youngest person who's speaking like with a CEO of Accenture, Julie Sweet, and different individuals. But like you said, just creating that personal brand around yourself.
Yeah.
It's super important.
Yeah, it carries a lot of weight. And I guess that's once again a perfect segue into the next topic, which is resumes exist, cover letters exist, LinkedIn's kind of the new way to go about it, personal branding, all that kind of stuff. But what I'm really interested in knowing, especially as UCR students as we are, UCR alumni, and currently as a graduate student, is what made you really want to start Wonsulting? What made you really want to start the career path that you're currently on and the trajectory that you're trying to do?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So actually, when I was at UCR, I was applying to the Big Four, going to the big banks. I actually flew out to Goldman Sachs twice, didn't get the offer, Didn't get any offers from Big Four, unfortunately. And that was kind of my company that I wanted to work for.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, like, is it because of the school I attend? Was it just because I was late to the game? But in reality, you can literally find these different opportunities just by using LinkedIn. And so that's why for every job, so Snap, I utilized LinkedIn Message to get that job. For LinkedIn content creation, I got Google. And then for LinkedIn personal branding, I got Cisco, right? So basically bridging the gap between these top students from non-target / non-traditional backgrounds and then helping them get into their dream companies is just super important. And the things that I love to teach literally aren't rocket science. Like the stuff I just told you, like you don't even need LinkedIn Premium for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the thing is, if you're able to provide that information and value to students and professionals, and they're able to see like, man, like this is so easy to do, then more people are gonna be like, okay, I can turn from like an underdog into a winner. So basically that's kind of how everything started. And so just from like my story of rejections, not getting into these companies, at the end of the day, I was able to just by utilizing LinkedIn and creating content and the personal branding as well.
Okay. And then obviously now Wonsulting, you said like what is it 2 years or 1 year?
It's
now?
1 year.
1 year fact. Like
Yeah, just literally 1 year, because it started January 20, which is my birthday, on 2019. So
Okay, so it's been 1 year. Obviously you've had a lot of progression with it. What has been kind of a learning curve that you've noticed when it comes to Wonsulting, and how you've kind of adjusted your practice necessarily, or things you've added on to what you're currently doing?
yeah, so what's really been interesting is thinking of the model specifically with scaling it out. So at first I was just doing like, it was just an idea, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I was starting it in 2019, I was just doing workshops. So I was like, I might as well just name it something. And then what I did was mixed winning with consulting. But then Wonsulting would sound like insulting. So I said Wonsulting, right? So, and plus my nickname is Wonton John, so I was like Wonton Consulting.
So I figured again.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Merged it again. I usually tell people the winning in consulting, but like people are like, what the hell is Wonton?
So you're like,
But yeah, but basically like, yeah, but it's been interesting. So basically I was trying to think of the different ways of how we get clients. So now, like for example, I actually didn't, like when I was charging people, I would charge super low. And so like I realized that it's not like, if you charge super low and you're putting like, let's say 10 hours of work and you're only getting paid $50, then that doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. So for example, what I try to do is do a life cycle. I call life cycle, I learned at Cisco. We talk about customer life cycles and different things. So we basically revise resumes, then we do a LinkedIn strategy like the one I just told you for that client. And then we prep them for interviews, and then we connect them to job opportunities. So basically at the end of the day, when you're going through Wonsulting, you'll be able to get a job, because that's the main point, right? If you're going through it, right? So I've been focusing more so on that side for our clients, and then the other side is speaking engagements. It's been really interesting because before I would always reach out to people, be like, yo, I'll do a workshop for you for free. But now, since it's grown the personal brand on LinkedIn, I literally barely do any reach outs. Like most of them are like, honestly, like probably 2% I reach out, like 98% usually the organization or university reaches out. So, but it's all just by creating that brand on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So you can literally find clients. There's actually so many different strategies you can use to find clients and speak engagements as well on LinkedIn. It's incredible to say the least.
Nice.
And you've done like certain engagements and workshops internationally and stuff too, right? Like in Turkey, and was it Turkey?
Oh, it was in Jordan.
Oh, Jordan, my bad. Jordan and Canada.
Jordan, Canada. Literally, I'm actually going to New York in 2 weeks, and then Michigan. Nice. I go back to SoCal all the time. In Texas too as well. Yeah, I did a lot of different places. So, but yeah, the one from Jordan was really interesting. That came from literally LinkedIn. I thought it was a scam at first, because I was like, man, Jordan, they're gonna fly out to Jordan. And then basically I flew out there. It was in 2018. It was actually when I was working at Snap, but I transitioned to Google. But yeah, I basically talked about kind of the future of work basically there, and it was really interesting. There was like 300 people, and it's I love traveling internationally for sure. It's beautiful, to say the least.
So who reached out to you for that one?
Yeah, it was this random girl. Like literally, I thought it was a scam. She had like 50 connection requests, and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But then she like sent me the actual website, and then I saw it was like legit, because there was like CEOs that came from last year, and I was like, man, why are they reaching out to me? Like I feel like I'm so young, and like I was only like 23 at the time, right? But at the end of the day, like I tell myself that age sometimes doesn't matter. It doesn't, right? Because at the end of the day, you can have abundance of knowledge when you're 18-year-old, right? There's so many different people. Like some people graduate college when they're 18, which is incredible, right? So age is definitely just a number, as I say. But yeah, basically, yeah, that was literally just through LinkedIn.
And I think that the reason why you've been able to grow so fast and a lot of people are reaching out to you is just because they can relate to you. I think a lot of times the biggest disconnect when it comes to a lot of the speak engagements and a lot of speakers out here and a lot of life coaches and career coaches is that a lot of our age think that they're disconnected from the reality of things. And I agree with that to a certain extent, because a lot of times when I hear career coaches talk, they're always talking about the resume. They're always talking about the cover letter, and they're putting a lot of emphasis into that. And I agree to that to a certain extent, but like that really doesn't get people jobs nowadays. It really doesn't, as we talked about earlier. And I feel like because you're so relevant, that's what really is opening the doors left and right. And then what you're speaking is actually causing an effect, and people can follow what you're talking about and actually get results out of it. It's not necessarily that they're just hearing something and then, so what? They can hear what you're saying and then actually implement it, and there's something that will physically happen right after that.
And I was gonna say, like those different opportunities of helping people actually come so much indirectly too as well. Like today, I hadn't talked to this guy in like a while, and like literally he reached out to me this morning and it was like, hey, just to let you know, man, thank you so much for your help. I've been reading your posts and Wonsultings, and I got an internship at Google. And he came from like a non-target school in Texas. And he was like, man, yeah, thank you so much. And that's happened a lot, especially with a lot of different individuals. Like, I honestly get like hella messages like every single like week, like hundreds of messages. But I try to message everyone back, because then you create that community aspect of, okay, this person's supporting Wonsulting. I would love to hear about your success story and your underdog turned winner story, right? But as you said before too, the resume and cover letter are basically kind of just the ticket in. But for example, you can literally find hiring managers that are hiring for the roles that you are interested in. And simply, do you know how you do it? It's actually going to be really funny. It's going to be really valuable to people listening. But all you got to do is, you go to LinkedIn jobs, right? And there's a LinkedIn job there. Well, all you do is copy the job, right? So let's say enterprise account executive at Zoom. Let's say Zoom, right? Type it in, put it into the search results, and it'll find all the people who are specifically in that role currently right now.
Yep.
Right? But guess what? You know what's even crazier? Change the people to content. You will find every hiring manager that's posted about the job that's hiring. Literally, it totally works. Like, this is what I tell people, and you can find every hiring manager. You send them a message instead of sending your resume to the application. You've literally broken down the process of you applying, and you've literally just reached out to the hiring manager.
Yep.
And it's so easy, like a caveman can do that, right? So like, and you don't even need premium. So basically, if you're able to do that, that's why the strategies are so like valuable, because a lot of people think it's super complex to get into companies. Oh, I need a prime resume. I need a beautiful cover letter. But imagine you just find the hiring manager who makes the decision at the end of the day. So
it's crazy how simple that is.
Right? Isn't that crazy, right? So that's what I actually did specifically for Snapchat.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, all right, where do I want to work? Okay, Snapchat. Put Snapchat into the search. Then I said, okay, I want to be an analyst. Snapchat analyst. Put it specifically on LinkedIn. Searched, found all the people who were Snapchat analysts. Filtered it to UCR. Wasn't a lot of people. Connected with all of them. And then I changed it to content. Found the hiring manager who was hiring for that position. And so what I did was I reached out to professionals first, talked to them on the phone, asked them about their day-to-day responsibilities. Then I reached out to the recruiter. I already knew all the things that they did on a day-to-day because of the employee, right?
Yeah.
And then by doing so, you're able to create a value prop for yourself, which will then be like, oh, this guy already knows about the job.
Yep.
Or what it entails, and he's networked with these people. And that's how you get into a big tech company or a top company, especially coming from like a non-target school, non-traditional background.
Yeah, and I think you touched on one of the most important pieces is what companies are looking for is they're trying to hire based off the value you provide to the company. And a lot of a lot of students, unfortunately, they apply to a lot of companies because they think that by applying to hundreds and hundreds of companies that they'll hear back from X percentage, they'll land X amount of jobs. But if you put the right amount of effort and actually do your due diligence with the company, that's how you do land that job. Because if you understand what their vision, their mission, their values, and understand what their current projects are on, what their job role is supposed to be, what they're going to do, you're the perfect fit for the company, because they're looking for those people that add value but also are part of that company culture and aligned with it. But if you can actually do reverse SEO engineering, which we're talking about, which is a very smart way, because that's how I do a lot of competitive analysis for companies using Google search engine exactly the same way. But if you use that for LinkedIn, you can actually figure out exactly all those things that I just brought up. You can understand what their mission, vision, you can understand what their values are, you can understand the daily role, what they're looking for, what their current projects are on, what's working, what's not working, if they have any complaints. You can understand everything by just looking it up.
And I was going to say too, literally the values like you talked about in the company, those are the interview questions.
Yep.
Like people don't understand, like it's like you can check Glassdoor, they'll give you questions, but if you think about it, all the questions they're asking are literally just from the values that they have on their website. So like, for example, I had one of my mentees, I actually had, Cindy Quach, she interviewed Amazon, got an offer specifically for product marketing up in Seattle. And literally all we prepped for was just we took questions out of the values of Amazon and we just prepped for them, and they were very similar to the interview process. Because at the end of the day, if you can, for example, relate to the values of a company and show that you have the potential to ultimately work and thrive in that company, then that's going to be what's most important, especially for a hiring manager. Because at the end of the day, like we talked about, everyone has very similar experiences and skills, but if you relate to the culture and the environment, that's going to be a differentiator between you and another candidate.
Definitely. And I one thing I am very, very interested in now, so obviously you've been able to grow Wonsulting quite drastically over the 1 year. What is your future aim? What are you really trying to do with Wonsulting? What is your next year goal? Next 5 year goal?
So basically, I'm building out a team right now. I actually just one of my good friends, Jerry Lee, you've probably seen him on my feed. He actually just joined as COO, so I'm really excited for that. So we do a lot of the speak engagements for a lot of the different universities and organizations. So hopefully we can be able to do over 100 by the end of the year.
Wow.
And then also we're building out, it's a secret right now, you'll see in June, but basically we're thinking of basically building out, we've been thinking about this for like a few months now, and we talked about this actually specifically with building the classes, but we're thinking of getting the top students from the non-target school, non-traditional backgrounds, and help them basically get jobs and have like different groups of these different individuals doing so. So for example, those in product management, those who want to get engineering, marketing, etc. So we have like a kind of full plan of doing that hopefully in June. And then number 3, hopefully partnering with like universities, specifically with like career centers, because at the end of the day, like I hope that all these career centers and individuals, especially from the smaller schools, can learn these strategies and ultimately apply them so they can get their percentages up from, like, for example, if I remember correctly, UCR's was, I think, 75 or 90%. Don't quote me on that, but basically like the percentage of people who get a job 6 months after they graduate. And so if we're able to bridge that gap and make that to like 100% just by using those strategies I just told you guys, literally that's going to be super important, especially with empowering future generations. So, but yeah, basically just building out a team. What I have is my mentees. So I have 20 mentees. They actually all got jobs from the top companies, and I like help them through the process. And so I have them joining Wonsulting and working on different projects to help scale out the different initiatives. So, and then last but not least, I'm building a community on LinkedIn. It's only been out for like a month, and we have like 500 members, which is really cool. So just scaling that out and then empowering other people to do speak engagements too as well, whoever wants to get into it. Because at the end of the day, we want to help not only our clients, students, and professionals get jobs, but then also other people to get into their own speaking engagements and share their story. Because at the end of the day, we all have an underdog turned winner story.
Definitely. And I mean, the one thing I really like what you're talking about is the connection to the university itself and working with the career centers. Because one thing I do see quite often when it comes to career centers is that usually those career centers have a very old school approach of how they're approaching companies and how they're trying to get recruitment. And I really think, like, for example, UCR has so much talent, like ridiculous amount of talent. Whatever department you're talking about,
like this guy Val and Nikhil.
I like to plug, but like, but the main thing when I'm talking about this is like, I know engineers at UCR that are just geniuses. I know people that are computer science, absolute geniuses. I know business students are absolute geniuses, but they still struggle to get into the companies that they want to, and that's really just because, one, the connections that UCR has, which is one thing that they are improving on, and the other thing is how they actually go about the recruitment process and how they actually prepare students. And I think by just teaching more modern ways of going about it and actually working with these students, UCR could be the top, the top university in a lot of fields, like getting the top candidates for consulting, for tech, for bioengineering, whatever it is. We could have the top skill set for it, and we have the potential for it, but it really requires that understanding and working and having students, alumni such as us, coming back and actually working with the school to bridge that gap, because all of us are doing what we're doing. We have been successful in our fields, but by us coming back and telling them exactly what we were missing when we were undergrads, they might be able to realize that and then project and push students up front.
And I was going to say too, that's like us creating opportunities for them, right? Because at the end of the day, the difference between Harvard and like UCR is just sometimes just opportunities, right? So for example, like companies will come to Harvard, sorry I said Harvard, but come to Harvard, come recruit specifically there directly and then hire them, right? But for us, we have to actually proactively go out there on LinkedIn or go to I remember I snuck into USC's career fairs and Cal State Fullerton's and those different ones because they had the big four, for example, right? So if you're able to create those opportunities, like you said, and empower other students to ultimately reach those career goals, then that's what's important. Because I also think what happens too is this sense of complacency when you, for example, are sending out the 100 applications, not hearing back. Maybe you hear back from one and it's like a freaking, shitty job, right? And it's something that you're not really passionate about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're able to use simple strategies like those ones, right, then you're going to be able to get into whatever career you really think that you want to go into.
Definitely.
Yeah, I feel like ultimately it comes down to, like, for UCR students especially, or other non-target schools, students from other non-target schools, like, it comes down to utilizing resources such as, or like basically everything that you just talked about on this podcast. If every single student did something like that, then they would be able to get attracted by these companies, and then eventually these companies are going to see the talent that comes out of these schools, and then they go to the school. So it's kind of like a cycle in a sense. And personally, like, at least when all three of us started at UCR and stuff, it felt like the school was like lacking certain resources, but now that we've graduated, we're alumni and we're giving back, slowly the school is like rising up in the ranks, and it's like, didn't it like jump like crazy?
It's ridiculous. It's jumping like 30 ranks per year. Like, I think we're right now like, don't quote me on this once again, like what you said earlier. I think we're like right now it's 79 as a business school, and that's ridiculous because we were
like
when we started, it was around like 138.
Right.
And just within the last 5 years, it's just
jumped,
skyrocketing in rankings. But that really comes from people such as the dean itself. Like, the school business dean is putting so much money and resources and stuff like that to really grow the school. There's people like Elaine Wong. There's, you have Ingram, and you have professors. You have Professor Rich, who's the new information systems professor. Like, you have a lot of professors that are really trying to propel and grow the school at a very, very fast scale, which is great. But it still doesn't touch on what we talked about earlier, which is that if the Career Center is still old school, does that really mean that we're going to get more opportunities for the students just because the school's growing? That's kind of where the struggle for me comes from, is just by the school growing in rankings, does that really mean that we're going to get better recruitment or better jobs for the students?
Right. And I was going to say, what UCR should do? They should have a required LinkedIn class.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like that would be really beneficial, right? Just
led by Jonathan Javier.
Yeah, Wonsulting, ring. No, I'm kidding. Us three, we can do it. All three of us together.
I'm down. I'm with it.
Right. So, I feel like it's so important because at the end of the day, like we talked about, right? I feel like honestly, resumes and cover letters are going to be obsolete at the end of the day because people can just literally look you up, find out who you are specifically on your LinkedIn, not only your LinkedIn, but your social media.
Everything across the board,
Twitter, Facebook, Tinder. No, I'm kidding. But
honestly, now probably
but yeah, no, basically, like, I'm telling you, the digital presence is so important because at the end of the day, you can literally see everyone's experiences, and if you're able to build a personal brand around yourself, where a recruiter will be like, oh yeah, I know Val already. He's an intellectual. He's buff. I'm just kidding. Kind of small. I'm just kidding. But yeah, like that, for example, then you're able to have opportunities come to you rather than you always have to seek opportunities and then, be deteriorated when they don't hear back, right?
Yeah.
Because like these big tech companies, it's interesting. A lot of people will actually, how they get in is not because they apply, it's because they reach out to them, literally on LinkedIn. Like my friend Angela Les, she just got a job at Google. They reached out to her, and I was talking to one of my friends literally on the car ride up here, and she was like, oh yeah, Google reached out to me for this sales role, and I'm in the final interview now. But for people who usually apply, sometimes it's a harder process because at the end of the day, it's not like the big company or the company wants you. It's rather you want to work at the company, and they're trying to validate whether or not you are qualified to work there.
All right. So I think we touched on a lot of good points. We touched about personal branding. We touched about LinkedIn, Wonsulting, everything from the origins to the growth of it. And a couple of things I want to close out on is obviously today's been a very sad day.
Yeah.
The day of the recording today, Kobe Bryant passed away, which is obviously horrific, sad times. Everybody who's a sports fan or even just a fan of people that are giving a positive light to a lot of things. But a couple of things I really want to close out is the concept of mindset, because Wonsulting wouldn't exist without mindset. Free Logic Media wouldn't exist without certain kinds of mindsets. And a lot of the mindsets really come from people that have done it before and have taught younger generations. I personally, obviously, have always looked up to Kobe Bryant, and I've always looked up to Nipsey Hussle, and unfortunately, within 1 year, we've lost both of them. But the mindsets they bring up and the positive light that they bring up, I think that's one thing that should be discussed and should be kind of projected out all across social media to have and inspire younger generations to really chase their dreams or chase what they really want to do in life. But the couple things I really want to touch on kind of Kobe Bryant, once again, I invite everybody to say their own thoughts on this, but at least for me personally, when it comes to Kobe Bryant, the mindset that always kind of got me where I am today is that Kobe Bryant's whole philosophy is on work ethic. I mean, everything he did was all about work ethic. I mean, one of his really famous quotes is said is, it doesn't matter how hard you work, I'm always going to work harder than you. And I love that because that's the way that I perceive everything. And when it comes to school, I mean, anybody who knows me knows that if I'm dedicated to something, I will work my ass off until I beat everybody in that space, because that's just like what I love to do. And it really came from me understanding the way that Kobe did it, because seeing somebody else do it before allows you to be able to really
envision
and perceive it. And that also comes to like Nipsey Hussle. Once again, we also lost him this year. When it comes to life is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's another philosophy. Those two together is the reason why I even talked to Nick Hill about creating Free Logic Media, and the reason why currently building out Edge Sound Research and Cannabis Lifestyle and all these companies is because life really is a marathon. It's not something that something just happens. You gotta really work for it. But then combine that with Kobe's philosophy of you gotta be the hardest worker in the room. If you don't put in the work for something, things just don't happen. And I think that's a mindset that I wish every single business student, not just business student, any student, any field you want to go into, if you really care about what you're trying to do, be the best in your craft and be patient with it. Because good things happen if you work for those things.
Definitely, and that Mamba mentality, as they say, right? You just work your ass off as hard as you can. And I was watching actually on ESPN2 when Jay Williams, if you guys know Jay Williams, former basketball player, he got hurt in a motorcycle accident, and then he basically couldn't play basketball anymore. He was talking about how he actually was sharing this story about him and Kobe Bryant, and he says that he was actually practicing before a game, and literally Kobe went there too as well to practice.
Yeah.
And Kobe was actually there for like 5 hours, and he was practicing for like 2 hours, and then he left. And then after the game, the Lakers whooped their ass, and thankfully, just kidding. Just kidding. But basically, what happened was, Jay Williams went up to Kobe after and was like, "Hey, what drives you, or what basically drives you and your motivation?" And I remember he said that Kobe was basically like, "Oh, I saw you working in the gym, so I had to make sure that I was working harder than you."
Yep.
Right. That same mentality, especially for coming from different backgrounds, especially from that underdog turn winner story, right? If you're able to apply that specifically with you networking, then you can be able to go into any company.
Yep.
Because like, for example, like I remember I would go drive to OC because that's where I wanted to work. I would look at the skyscrapers, look at the companies that work there, and then write them down. Then go home, look at the career website, and then I network with people on LinkedIn to specifically network with those people to get into these opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So if you're able to put, for example, allocate time, especially for networking, because like people will, for example, I remember my first 2 years, I was just like partying, and I wasn't being focused in my career. And I realized that I was allocating time to things that were temporary rather than things that are long-term, right? So if you're able to allocate, for example, 4 hours, like skip a party for 4 hours, allocate that time to networking, maybe that's 8 phone chats, 30 minutes, you know how much value will come just from that?
It can change your life.
Right? It changes your life, right? And for example, like definitely like I remember too, like I would be like, man, should I go fly to Alpha Convention? Because we had that every single year. I was like, man, it's $500, right? I was like, should I do it? But in reality, I was thinking about it later on. I was like, hell yeah, I should. Because at the end of the day, if I pay $500 to get into a dream company and make $80,000, that $500 is nothing.
And a lot of people buy new phones, they buy iPhones, they buy whatever the newest, latest tech is, but they invest their money into things that don't really matter, but they do it because the perspective that a lot of people think about them, like it's sad, obviously, unfortunately, but like a lot of people put their money into things that don't matter. Like a lot of people ask me like, oh, why did you invest money into Free Logic Media? Why are you putting your money that you're making from Esri into your own company? I'm like, because this is going to pay dividends when I'm older. This is going to pay money when I'm older. I believe in this vision. I believe what we're doing. And that really kind of goes back to your point, is just that your time and your money should be allocated towards the things that don't just matter now or just because it's clout, but because they matter in the long term.
Definitely. You have to look at that long-term game at the end of the day, right? And that's amazing. I actually do the same thing specifically with my job, and I put it into Wonsulting, right? Because when you're investing back into these companies that you're passionate about, and I see both of you guys passionate for Free Logic Media, then that at the end of the day is what's going to take you into that. I'm assuming you guys want to do this full-time eventually in that scale, right? That'll be able to take you into that time from being in corporate or working at a company to being your own boss, right? Because I feel like at the end of the day, we should all be our own bosses. Right? I don't want to, for example, I want to be my own boss and do my own thing, but also impact thousands of lives, right? And so do you guys. So yeah, definitely have that mindset and perspective, and it can get you places.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Do you have
I
anything
think,
else?
so like, I mean, ultimately, like with these guys, Kobe, Nipsey, Mac, everyone, a lot of these big people that we've lost, like, it's the influence that has like really like affected us, right? Like mindset is one thing, but influence is the other. I mean, I personally looked up to other basketball players a lot more, but then again, like it's Kobe, and Kobe's one of those people who really influenced the game and influence other people. Like Evan, he's wearing a Lakers jersey right now, and you know, all of our friends were like mourning this guy's death because he not only influenced the game but influenced our mindsets and influenced the things that we ended up doing. Like one reason why Free Logic Media is here is because Kobe influenced this guy's mindset. That's just like, that's crazy, man.
And we yell Kobe every time we shoot
or beer pong. It doesn't matter.
Beer pong, exactly, right? I literally did that last night.
Yeah, so and I think that's why I was really sad about it. It was just like, this guy was only 41 years old, and he was still doing crazy things, making movies.
Won an Oscar, his own brand, everything.
Everything. It's crazy. Like it's like Shaq and Kobe and Michael Jordan, all these people. After basketball, they have their own businesses.
Yeah.
They went like do these different things to help the communities. Like Kobe built out his own facility, for example.
Yeah, and donated most of his money back in, trying to do economic development in low-income areas. Like
exactly. So I mean, it's sad. It's sad news, but I know Kobe at the end of the day would tell us to work our asses off in memory for him. So
definitely.
But
yeah. But to end on a more positive note, obviously still a sad day, but to end on a positive note, the way that we like to end the brew is by having the guest provide the last piece of advice, whether it be around entrepreneurship or just personal development, whatever it is. But what is your last piece of advice you would like to give out to those listening?
Yeah, I was going to say definitely utilize LinkedIn, and if you have your own underdog turn winner story, please let me know. We'd love to showcase it so we can inspire and empower more people to get into their dream careers. Yeah, I mean, the strategies that I love to teach are like the ones I told you guys about. They're super simple. It's very, very, things that don't have to be complex. What I like to say is it's not rocket science, right? So definitely use LinkedIn. Number one, this is how you basically network. Number one, have a bucket of people for professionals and another bucket for recruiters. Reach out to the professionals first who are either alumni from your school, alumni from your organization. Go onto their LinkedIn page, go to the alumni section, and then search for whatever position you're interested in. Let's say operations analyst at Facebook. Network with the person, then learn about their day-to-day, then go to the recruiter, literally take the information you got from the professional, put into your resume where you've used it, then go to the recruiter, speak the same language as that person, you're gonna get the job, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're the same as a Facebook employee or an employee of that company, the recruiter is always gonna be like, oh, this person's literally the candidate I wanna hire.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, recruiters have 8 hours in a week, not 8 hours, 8 hours in a day, 40 hours in a week to find a perfect candidate, right? You just save them time because you already fit those qualifications, and they're ranked their goals are based on how many people they recruit, right? So if you're able to bridge that gap, you're able to get into your dream career.
I think that's fantastic advice. It's a win-win-win situation for everybody.
Right.
But I think that's the perfect way to close out the brew. I appreciate you coming on to today's show. I think it was a great conversation. And at this time, it's a wrap.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Of course.
Thank you.